Thank you, Owen. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Pierce. I'm the chairman of the Traffic Safety Committee. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I just have a few items to read. This open meeting of the Traffic Safety Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on March 29th, 2023. All members of the Traffic Safety Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The Act allows the Traffic Safety Committee to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed in the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative so we can make sure we can hear you. Lisa Maselli.
Aye.
Chris.
Here.
Rachel.
Here.
Brian.
Here.
Sorry, Bryce. And Kate.
Here.
Hey, staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Scott Charpentier.
Present.
And Brian Griffith.
Here.
Okay. When we get to the public portion, I will read that piece. So why don't we get started? We'll start with the new items. First off, we have a crosswalk alert system for schools, specifically Lincoln Street. Scott, do you want to speak on this one?
Certainly. So, Mr. Chairman and committee members, as requested at the prior meeting, we've included as an attachment to the agenda the original requests that have been made to Public Works through the Traffic Safety Committee website with citizen inquiries. And this one, the items A and B came from the same citizen. They were interested in some pedestrian crosswalk safety improvements along Lincoln Street adjacent to the school. So there are 3 crosswalks. There were 2 over Melican, 1 at Lincoln Street Elementary School. The request was for rectangular rapid flashing beacons and or speed humps at these locations. The following request, which is somewhat tied to it, is came from the school department, item C, which is for replacement of control equipment at the school zone indicators at both locations. So there's 4 of those school zone indicators, 1 on each side of Melican Middle School and 1 on each side of Lincoln Street Elementary School. So those were the requests that came in. To give you a little bit of information about the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, those are what we have installed at Ellsworth, McAfee Park over by Davis Ave and Longfellow. We have one at Assabet by Gale, and we have another one over between Casey Memorial Field and East Main Street. There's also 2 of them on Bartlett Street, one at Maple and Bartlett, and the other one at the trail crossing on Bartlett Street down by Bartlett Pond. We've implemented those through a couple funding mechanisms. One was a shared winter streets grant program that was implemented by Mass DOT a few years ago. And the other one was funded through mitigation funds provided by Amazon. Those were for the 2 on Bartlett Street. They're costly. They're $7,000–8,000 a set. That does not include installation. Installation could be another $2,000 or $3,000 to set. And when we do the installation, we also make sure that the wheelchair ramps are compliant. So if the wheelchair ramps there are not compliant, we typically rebuild them. So the one at Assabet, those ramps were compliant. The ones down at Longfellow and Davis were not. So we replaced those. So the cost per set can be $10,000 to $12,000. In our operating budget, FY24, which is the fiscal year we're in right now, we have 1 set allocated in the budget. So it's a pretty costly item. So I wanted to give you a bit of a background on what the costs are and where we have these devices.
Okay. Brian, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Just for context, and I know speed humps are their own kettle of fish, but how much would a speed hump, how much would a raised crosswalk, that's the word I'm looking for, at that site cost?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look into it. It's less expensive than the rectangular rabbit flashing beacons. I would have to get quotes from a contractor. I'm going to say it's in the $5,000 to $6,000 range with advanced warning signs, pavement markings, and excavation and construction. Sometimes there's some drainage improvements that would be required. So if you were to do it on a cut-through road that has what I refer to as country drainage, where water just runs off the road, for example, like Howard Street doesn't really have much closed drainage. That's a lot less expensive because you don't have gutter flow. Along Lincoln Street, we do have gutter flow. So that can be problematic in that you often, if there's not adequate roadway width, have to install new catch basins on the uphill side. So that would be site-specific evaluations on whether that's needed or not.
Oh, no, I was just looking for that ballpark. I would have guessed that the that the raised crosswalk was less expensive than the flashing beacons. So thank you.
Yep. If we needed closed drainage because of inadequate width of the paved way, it'd be 2 new CBs, 2 new pipes, 2 new manholes. CBs and manholes are $3,000 to $5,000 each. So, each one would be $15,000 plus some pipes. So you could be in the $20,000 range with drainage. If there's no drainage, it's $5,000 to $6,000 with a pavement. It's some advanced warning signs and pavement markings.
Okay, Lisa.
Couple questions. Scott, did those lights go up that much? Because when we did them the last time, they were half that much.
They were $6,000 and we low bid it. And you saw what happened. I don't know if you remember last February, we had a really cold stretch with some incredible winds, and all 3 sets that we installed under the Shared Winter Streets program, DOT funding, broke. And we had to get them all replaced. So unfortunately, the low bid mechanism was problematic for us. Since then, a more, I guess I don't want to say reputable, but a more durable product has been approved on the state bid list, which are the ones that are on Bartlett Street. Those are more expensive, but more durable.
Because I know we talked about putting some of those up around town. And that might be something that right now, when we still have ARPA money, that we could put toward ARPA money allowance for certain roads, if you wanted to set some of those up, especially for the school situations. Because
our goal and objective was to install these in a programmatic fashion at high use sites, parks, playgrounds. Kids are running between Memorial and Casey all the time. And schools would obviously be one of those areas where there's parking on one side of the road and a facility on the other. There's some satellite parking for the Unitarian Church. So there are some known locations that would be viable for that. So Lower Church Street, Lower Pleasant Street at Church. That's a frequently used crosswalk. I know that. And it's a mid-block crosswalk, which is not often expected by drivers. So locations like that we'd be focused on.
So would Lincoln Street is a school area. So I thought they had one there. They don't, they just have the signage.
Yep, correct. Yep.
I mean, it's certainly something that would benefit everybody. You don't want anybody crossing the street and getting kids hit or what have you. But I think at least those 3 areas for sure. I mean, Pleasant Street is a need, and Lincoln Street would be a need. But I don't know that you'd get 3 at Lincoln. I mean, what would you say, Brian?
There's 2 Brians. Which one, Lisa?
The police chief on that one. Sorry.
Could you repeat the question, Lisa? Sorry.
We were talking about the lights and where would be, the good places to put them. And say we came up with, say you wanted to do 5 and put a five together and then bring them forward with ARPA so that we could get them up. We talked about Pleasant Street, obviously, which is serious. Lincoln Street, maybe 2. Because I know we've got 3 on 135, right, Scott? 3 or 4?
There are 3 on South Street. There's Lincoln Street has 2 crosswalks associated with Melican, one at each end, and 1 at the elementary school.
I think the more the merrier. I think they're great. I really do. They just jump out at you. In the community I live in, they're all over the place. I actually pressed the button on one the other day myself to cross safely, and it really works. So I'm fully supportive of if Scott has a plan to implement it however we can, but the more the merrier at schools. I think that Pleasant Street one is a really a big one with the number of kids from the middle school that go downtown after school. I would be that would be one of the first places I'd like to see one.
Okay. So if we were to do 5, what would you say? That's 3. What would the other 2 be, Scott?
We have so there's Lower Pleasant. There's 3 on Lincoln Street, 1 on Lower Pleasant. The we've identified there was a trying to think of, we had 2 other locations that we were interested in putting them.
I would think one, Scott, might be crossing Pleasant right at Lincoln, because I know there are a lot of kids that'll walk up Pleasant Street and then cross over to get to Lincoln Street to the Milliken School. They'll cross over Pleasant there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of
you're right. Across Pleasant, so you go from Milliken across Lincoln, and then you go across Pleasant as well, and then
Right.
and then head down and cross Church Street. Right, that would be another one.
That's
And
kind of the one I was thinking of, Bill, was that spot. They tend to watching the kids leave school there. They leave in a pack, right? So they're kind of all over the place, where I think any extra signal there would be helpful.
Yeah, I've seen my kids go to Milliken, and what I've seen is people will be driving up Pleasant thinking, I got to go pick up my kids or I got to go drop off my kids, and not looking that there's a crosswalk right there.
Exactly.
Right? They're looking at the one on Lincoln, but they're not looking at the one on Pleasant. And I've seen them blow by kids waiting to cross there. So I think having one there is probably would make sense as well.
Pleasant. What?
yeah,
Mhm.
mid block crosswalks are by far the most dangerous. They're unexpected. We get a lot of reports at the bottom of Cedar Hill, across South Street. People have concerns at that location. Of course, that location doesn't have a sidewalk on the Cedar Hill side, so it's really obscure crosswalk location. But yeah, there are those mid blocks are dangerous.
Well, that's 4, so maybe what we can do is figure out when to bring them, maybe at our next meeting to bring it forward. Because we're working on the ARPA, trying to get the ARPA funds finished.
Yeah, and some of this we could always do. You could always do for the next fiscal year too, right?
Yeah.
Scott said he had enough in this year's budget to do one, but if we can, put it to town meeting to get the other 4 for next fiscal year.
Yeah, I mean, I could propose, 2 per year. And again, it's the same discussion as we often have, and that's, finances and resources. They're limited, and where do you allocate them?
Has there been any talk, Scott, about Northgate at the crossing there with where the school crossing guard is?
Chesterfield over across the Northgate to get over to Beasley.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's safe during the day. It's safe during the day when there's the crossing guard is there during the morning and the afternoon, but vehicles tend to go at a pretty good clip down there. Clearly, it's a cut through, and there's a lot of kids in the neighborhood that would be utilizing Proctor School. Just another one to throw out there.
Yeah, that was one of the other locations I was thinking of. It's a mid block. When you want to cross Jefferson or Washington at Northgate, it's not a big deal. It's at an intersection. You're expected to stop. It's those mid blocks like on Northgate that are unexpected and are more dangerous.
Okay. All right, well, I'll certainly bring it up to us, and then I'll certainly use my influence to get some hits.
That's why we love having you here, Lisa. You can explain everything that we go through. Kate, I saw you had your hand up earlier. Did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I guess my first question is talking about Lincoln Street and Pleasant Street. Are you thinking about putting 4 along that route, 1 at Lincoln, 2 at Melican, and 1 on Pleasant at Lincoln?
Yes, and then another one at Lower Pleasant where it crosses Church. So if you're a middle school student and you're going to Cumberland Farms, those are the crossings that you take.
Yeah.
And they're all mid-block crosswalks with the exception of Pleasant and Lincoln.
So I guess my first question is, do you think that that's too many at Melican? Like, are they going to be so close together that it's going to kind of get lost on people? And I hope not, because I would love to have them there as a runner. It's pretty dangerous too. But I just wondering, just because they are, especially the one at the end of Lincoln Street crossing Melican and then immediately around the corner.
That's sort of like alarm fatigue. Yeah, for sure.
The one that could be eliminated would be the one on the Pleasant Street side of Melican, because it's almost right at the intersection, and that's an expected stop location. The one that is south side of Melican, which is the Lincoln Street side of Melican, the summer programs that the rec department runs have children walking all the time from Lincoln Elementary School up to Melican, and that's a mid-block, and those are not expected stops.
That crosswalk, I used to see people going through the crosswalk every morning, just about when I would be dropping my son off or like leaving Melican. And the best morning was one morning when I was waiting to leave Melican and a woman cut off a kid, had to jump back, and there was a cruiser directly behind her. So that was like the highlight. But my other question is, the 135 crosswalk lights, are those new at the park?
They were installed, I want to say 4 years ago, under a low bid scenario that I described earlier. And then 2 years ago, they were damaged during a wind event and replaced.
Right.
They've been
So
there.
so they've been there a little while, like the new ones.
Yep.
Okay. Because I don't go that way often, but I just went through there the other day and I was thinking, I don't remember the crosswalk signal being that awesome. Basically, it looked like it was brand new, so that's great. And my other question is, what do you mean with the wheelchair ramps being compliant versus non-compliant? Are they compliant for that crosswalk signal or compliant in general?
Compliant in general with the Architectural Access Board code. So cross slope, longitudinal slope, tactile warning strip, material. A lot of our wheelchair ramps are just asphalt, bituminous concrete. They don't hold tactile warning strips. That's that panel with the bumps onto the truncated domes, the truncated domes. That's a compliant ramp. So if you go to Longfellow at Ellsworth, you'll see the ramp construction that we did there. It's a lot of concrete flat work, but if you're going to do improvements, you should have that to be compliant crossing. It's just the right thing to do.
So that's sort of like an accessibility issue as well as safety.
Correct.
And Scott, would you be able to do those under a Complete Streets grant?
We could. I know that the planning director, her goal and objective through the Master Plan Implementation Committee is to utilize the Complete Streets funding, which is $500,000 cap on the downtown revitalization work, specifically along Blake Street. I believe is the first project the select board approved design funding at one of their recent meetings. The Complete Streets projects are required to be shovel ready when you submit them. Right. So the onus is on the municipality to pay for all the design services, and then you can see construction funding. So I expect that $500,000, which sounds like a lot, but municipal construction is not a lot, to go toward the first start of some downtown revitalization.
Okay. Good. I'll open up if there's anyone who would like to make, in the public, who'd like to comment on this particular item. Let me just get up my instructions here for everybody. So if you want to make a public comment, if you're on a phone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the chair. Please note that part of your phone number will be visible to those viewing the meeting. By Zoom, click raised hand at the bottom of your screen and wait to be recognized by the chair. The chair will ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their name and address only. Once the chair has a list of all public commenters, the chair can call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comment. So is there anyone in the public who would wish to comment on this particular item? Oh, we do have a hand. Alan L., I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Hi, Alan Lau, 35 Shady Lane Ave. So my daughter goes to Lincoln Street School. She's a walker there, and we're going to have another daughter going there next year. And right now, Lincoln Street does not have a crossing guard. So when we go walk her to school in the morning, the crosswalk is blocked on one side by a telephone pole. So me as an adult, it's easy for cars to see, but small children, they might have an issue. And you know, I've definitely seen it with some kids that don't walk with their parents, and cars that go fast and furious through Lincoln Street in the morning. And we had one incident where I was at the crosswalk with her, somebody was stopped, and then somebody went around that person that was stopped. And if I didn't stop my daughter, we would have gotten creamed. So that's my say, and letting you guys know.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Maybe the police chief. I was just going to go to you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a response to Alan's question. Alan, do you know the last time there was a crossing guard down there?
So the crossing guard resigned her post because she's also the lunchroom manager. I believe it was 2-3 weeks ago. It was after the holidays. Okay. So they've been without a crossing guard for quite a bit.
Okay, yeah, that because when you said that, I've always pictured someone down there, which clearly I think when that crossing guard is there, it's definitely a good thing.
Very much so.
I'm hoping that the school has plans to advertise it. And
the last I heard from the principal, they're still interviewing. I guess it's a tough position to fill.
Okay, these are why I like being on these meetings, because you know, I didn't know that, so we can clearly make sure that there's extra radar being done on Lincoln Street and school days and things like that. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it. Any other comment on this item? Okay. We'll hold on any type of vote or anything till afterwards on each of these items, just so we can go through all of them. So actually, to see, Scott, you had brought up as well about the school department with the school zone controls. What can we do? I don't know if there's anything we can do about that, but.
So the assistant superintendent reached out to me, asked about replacement of the control mechanisms at the 4 school zone assemblies on Lincoln Street. I told them we have a traffic safety committee. I'd be happy to bring it to their attention, that the equipment is aged beyond its useful life and needs to be replaced. This is the control equipment, not the post and lights and the everything. It's the brains or the guts inside of the equipment. It's about $1,500 per set. There's 2 sets, so about $3,000. I informed the school department that we don't. TPW doesn't have a budget to manage and repair the school equipment, but we do have the $8,000 allocated to a single crosswalk lighting system. And if the Traffic Safety Committee thought it would warranted expending those funds toward school equipment rather than crosswalk safety improvements, then I'd be happy to bring it to the committee's attention and find out what their thoughts are.
Okay. My initial thought is I think it's more important to do the crosswalk than it would be for for this control. Do we know, so did the school put these controls in, or was that done by DPW previously?
Those are the school's responsibility. We coordinate with the vendor to help, repair them and reach out to, when the school has an issue, we'll call the vendor, they'll fix them and they'll send the bill over to the schools. But we don't have any responsibility associated with that equipment.
Okay.
The only one we do have is the safety zone on Bartlett Street, because that's not a school zone.
Right.
That's specific to the roadway.
Any members have? Go ahead.
I guess one thought I have on, what's the turnaround time on installing any crosswalk alert system, and how long is that going to take?
It's a solid 2 months to get the equipment. This time of year, I really don't want to be doing concrete flat work. Not a good idea putting flat work on frozen ground, and we don't want to dig, 2 feet down for no reason. So no matter what, nothing would be done until probably April or May with any crosswalk enhancements.
Right. And I guess I looked at Lincoln Street, and it looks like we're going to need pedestrian ramps on both of those crossings, unless those ramps, it looks like it just leads to the granite or the asphalt curb and grass there. So that's probably another additional expense on top of the alert system itself. So I just thinking, like, is it worth investing in what we already have for infrastructure there to kind of help mitigate some of the speeding? I know all of these don't work perfectly. Even some of the RRFBs don't alert every single driver. It does obviously alert a lot of them, but does it make sense to get those fixed for the school department? I guess is my 2 cents.
I would hate to get into the idea that we should be. I think once we fix one of these, right, or once we replace one of these, we're going to own one of these, right, and then we're going to own all of them in the town. And I think that gives the wrong message. If the school is responsible for it, then Scott and Brian and the fire chief have done a really good job over the last ever since I've been here, of doing a rotation of all of their assets, right? And getting into the habit of, just one change out per year, right? And then you get into that rotation of doing just one per year, and it makes smaller asks. Mm-hmm. And, I think I would be fearful that once we open that Pandora's box of replacing one of these, that we would own one of these, or we would own all of them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Rachel.
So as you know, I live off of Bartlett Street, and we have both the safety zone and the RRFB. And people ignore that safety zone, and the RRFB is much more effective. So I think that we should completely fix both problems. But in my experience, the RRFB is very effective at alerting drivers, and if there is a visibility issue, it's certainly much more effective than a raised crosswalk or anything like that. So in my experience, it's more effective. I would love to see both. And I completely agree with Bill that the school zone lights are not something that should come out of a DPW budget or a traffic safety budget, but RRFBs, in my experience, have been really effective on Bartlett Street.
Okay. Lisa.
I think that I agree with the RRFBs. I think that's something, again, you should bring forward at our next meeting, along with everything else. I think the last meetings of what you've decided. Is a letter going to go out? I mean, that's one thing we should do, is put a letter out to the school, or who's in charge of that at the school, and making the recommendation for them to put it in their budget. Because if we don't say anything, then it may just be like that for another few years. So at least if it's there, it's note we've been asked about it, We've addressed it by asking the right people and not having to, make a decision that whether it's important or not important. I think it is for the, when you're talking children and you're talking schools, you really have to consider everything that has to go with that. So I think a letter from the Traffic Safety Committee and Scott, or saying that, on day one or whatever the day is that was brought to the attention of. Do they know already, Scott? Do they know that this is a problem?
Yes. Yeah, the school department brought it to my attention. I said I would bring it here. And what happens typically after these meetings, every one of the items was brought to our attention from a citizen. I reach out to that citizen, let them know this was the discussion. These are the results. If you have any concerns, what have you, let me know. I'll do the same thing with the school department, just like I do with the citizen. Here it is. The decision was that resources may be better expended on RFBs in the area, which provide quite a bit of safety enhancements to the area. And you may want to consider bolstering your operating budget to have a systematic approach to replacing aging equipment.
Right. All right. And then, okay. And we get a copy of that too, right?
I'll copy the chair.
Yep. And then I know we already have a plan, Scott, I forget if it's in the spring or in the fall, to do a traffic study on Lincoln Street, right? We were doing that for a heavy vehicle exclusion. But
that's correct. Central Mass Regional Planning Commission will be doing traffic counts on Lincoln Street, Upper and Lower Pleasant in the spring. They've committed to that. My expectation is that at least Upper Pleasant and Lincoln will meet the criteria. I hope it does, and I believe it's a warranted heavy commercial vehicle exclusion route. It's the right thing to do with the schools.
Right. And I think we can probably use that information to then make a judgment on, whether we think we need raised sidewalks at those schools or not.
Yep.
And then were they going to do a study too on, did you say Brigham Street?
Brigham Street was brought up, and the discussion resulted in the result of Brigham Street may be the same as Summer Street. The alternate route is through that intersection of South and Main, which is problematic for almost every tractor trailer driver out there. So if you were to truck exclude Brigham, it would be the same discussion we had with Summer Street. The alternate route would be 135 to 20, or it would be Summer Street. So you basically taking a truck off of Brigham Street and pushing them up Summer.
Well, all right, because I think the board's interested in talking about getting a restriction on Summer. So
On what street?
on Summer. So
Summer, I think we as a traffic safety committee voted not to. I mean,
Right.
Obviously we just advised the board they can make their own decisions, but we didn't think that it was beneficial at all to the center of town. So
if I remember right, the rationale was basically that building at the corner of 135 and 20 was too close to the intersection, and that we were asking for trucks to just smack into it.
Well, the two left turn lanes going on to Route 20, but the
That too.
truck having to be in the left of that's just a disaster waiting to happen.
And
Oh,
then
I did-
likely have to over track into the other oncoming lane.
Yeah.
I did reach out to the resident who inquired about the exclusion, let them know the result, and indicated to them if they have a concern or there's a desire for further consideration, that the select board is for lack of better terms, appellate board, but where the formal decision is made. This is, as the chair knows, let us know, there's an advisory committee. I advise the resident of the results. If they want to pursue it further, the select board is the proper avenue. Is that correct, Mr.
Right.
Chairman?
Yes. Yep.
That's great. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
and it did meet the criteria from what I remember that conversation.
Yes.
Yep.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Chris, you had brought up that because a truck needs to make a right turn from the left-hand lane, that the DOT might flag a truck exclusion in the alternate route. Can you elaborate on that a little more? Was that an issue?
It comes down to both roads being arterials, and they really don't like to see over tracking with big trucks like that into oncoming traffic. And especially if, there's a strong number of left turns there, it's probably going to be an issue. I guess it depends on where the stop bar placement is and all that, but it's just something that might get flagged because they're taking up a left lane to go into oncoming traffic as well, or potentially go into oncoming traffic. And just kind of creating an unsafe condition.
Yeah, I mean, that was a concern for me.
Yeah.
But, I mean, unsafe, it's unsafe too to see Summer being so narrow and people coming out on Summer, going in on Summer at Route 20. So, I mean, you have two safety areas. One is the neighborhood and one is the highway. So,
Right, 100%.
So after we kind of, like, that's not really, and this is more of a question than anything, obviously, because I'm new to all of this, but once we vote on whether we want to recommend that or not, is that still really an ongoing item for us? I mean,
No, it's not for us. The appellate
right.
process would be to the select board. So they would have to
Okay.
write to the select board and get on the select board agenda. Right.
Oh,
Okay.
And then what I would do as chairman is I would sit in on that and I would advise the select board as to what our discussion was, why we decided the way we did.
Right.
If the select board decides to, do the truck exclusion anyways, then they have every right to do that.
Of course. Sure.
well,
I just didn't know if it was something that we should be kind of going over and spending more time on, but
I'll let it go. I just want to say that I think we are waiting to hear from you. Not that we were expecting the person who had the problem to call the select board.
So let me ask you this, Lisa. Do you want us to send you every, whether we agree or don't agree, every response? We can do that, and then that way the select board is aware of it.
I think that probably would be easier, like at this meeting, this is what happened, at this meeting, this is what happened. These were our recommendations. It's kind of
Okay.
like design review, I think, with planning.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead,
When we
Scott.
discussed this with the town administrator and the chair, I believe the decision was what we had just described. We advise the residents. If the residents choose to pursue it further, they're being advised that the avenue is, if you have a concern, tell me, let me know, get back in touch with me, then I'll put you through the process, which would be go to the select board, get on the agenda. The chairman, Bill, the chair here would be there, and the select board can then deliberate and decide. Because there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things that we go through here, and I don't know if it warrants select board time to talk about, should we fund the school's equipment replacement? I mean, I'm happy to communicate however the decision is, but what Bill and I have described is what was discussed and agreed upon. Maybe two chairs and the town administrator can talk again, but that seemed like the most streamlined approach.
Well, that'd be good for us to know about. So thank you.
Yep.
well, you're here, Lisa. So is that something that you could maybe report to the board as our liaison?
Yeah,
Rather
Lisa
than
wasn't
Bill
here.
having to go do it again?
Well, Lisa wasn't here. To be fair, Lisa wasn't here when we made that first decision about Summer Street.
Okay. Was
Lisa
Laura
swapped out
or-
after. Yeah,
Okay.
Laura had missed that meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, so to be
But
fair,
going
that's why.
forward, you wouldn't have to report everything to the
No.
board.
Yeah, no, you're right. I would just probably take what you did at the end of the meeting and bring it forward, or the following month. So that we. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move on here. We've got, let's see, 2D, crosswalk with alert system on Hudson Street and Silas Ave,
Yep.
or Silas Drive.
So Silas is over on Hudson Street before the aqueduct. It's on the left-hand side as you're heading out of town. It's a straight stretch of Hudson Street. It's a very short cul-de-sac. There's 5 homes on it. There is sidewalks along the cul-de-sac road. They're in good enough shape, but they're a little segmented, meaning there's sections of lawn that kind of stop before you get to a driveway. And a citizen reached out and asked for a crosswalk across Hudson Street with some safety protective measures. Again, this would be a mid-block crosswalk. They're very dangerous. Typically, the only location you put mid-block crosswalks is when there is a specific destination or user group. So, for example, there is a mid-block crosswalk at Center Drive that goes to the other side of Hudson Street for the senior housing authority property, so they can get to Cumberland Farms. That was another location. I was thinking about the RFPs. That's a viable location. You know, the one on Lincoln Street by the school, the one by the parks. It's a small cul-de-sac that is along a main road. I would not recommend implementing a mid-block crosswalk here. It would be different if it was, for example, the Indian Meadow neighborhood going across to Northgate so they could get over to Proctor and that old neighborhood. It's not. It's 6 houses. There's not a lot of users there, considering the danger of the crosswalk.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Chris.
Yeah, just I guess one other thing to add too. If I'm looking at the street view, if you look to the left, if you're standing on Silas Drive looking left, it's coming over that hill on Hudson Street that we all know people tend to fly. So even as Scott said, mid-block crossings are dangerous as is. That just adds a whole new layer of danger right there. Even with the RRFBs, coming over that hill, you're not really expecting that. So it's definitely a dangerous spot.
Yeah, and are people even going to see it when they're coming over that hill?
Right.
Go ahead, Kate.
I want to note that I can completely appreciate where this resident is coming from. I live on the end of Davis Street and I go to Cold Harbor all the time. And I always say, oh my gosh, I would love if there was a crosswalk somewhere around here so I could cross the street. And it's the same thing. I mean, there is really no safe place that you could put one in that area where it wouldn't be probably more of a danger to drivers than it is for people crossing the street, because putting a crosswalk there doesn't mean it's going to be any safer. It means that the driver's more likely to be at fault if you cross and they hit, you know what I mean? So I very much appreciate where they're coming from, but I agree that it probably is not the safest place to do that.
There's a false sense of security when you have the crosswalk. Exactly. You assume everybody's going to stop, and that's not unfortunately the world we live in right now.
Perfectly said. Yeah.
Is this something unfortunately. Unfortunately. Yeah. Is this something that like a raised path, some type of like a raised crosswalk might help? Because at least that would slow people down with some, you get a warning if there's a raised crosswalk and they're going to have to slow down before they get to that area.
I don't believe there's any successful advance warning that's going to slow people down. Not a lot of people look at signs anymore. It's not like we're not suffering from sign clutter yet here. Some communities are, but there's not a lot of attention out there, and unless it's lit up and pointing at you, a lot of people don't really notice it, unfortunately.
Well, I know in places like there's a few places in Sudbury and in Concord and Acton, right, where in a lot of those cut-through roads they've put in either speed humps or speed bumps to, slow down the cut-through traffic going down those roads. And I can tell you, you hit one of those, not expecting it, and you're never going to miss it again. But, it's just a thought. And that's one of those areas you were talking about before that we wouldn't really have to worry about the drainage too much.
Right.
Is this
Yeah, it is. Sorry, Lisa. Go ahead.
the one on is this Hudson before the aqueduct bridge?
Yes.
So it's like coming from town going under the bridge. Didn't
Yes.
that speed limit also get reduced? Does that like slow down at that area?
I think just over the hill.
Yes.
So that hopefully you don't crash into the bridge when you turn. So
Yeah.
I kind of like your idea there, Bill. Okay.
Yeah, maybe it's something to think about. That might have to be another area we're going to have to look at doing, some type of review on later. I don't know if that's one we're going to solve today.
And the discussion we're going to have shortly about the peer community survey with the speed humps may shed a little bit of light on that. Hudson Street certainly is not what I would refer to as a cut through. It's it's how you get from downtown to
Right.
290.
290.
Yeah,
Let's
or
take turns.
Marlboro.
So, yeah, exactly. It's a pretty substantial ADT over there. So
Right.
okay.
Okay. Is there anyone, actually, I didn't open this up for the other one either. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak on either the Lincoln Street or the Lincoln School controls or the, oh, we do have a hand up. Sorry, I know I'm not going to get this name right, but is it Aish?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. I think you might have two
Hi, yes,
devices on.
thank you.
Oh, she just dropped. Give her a minute to join back on. I think she had put that her address is actually on Silas Drive, so.
Oh, okay. Maybe this is the resident who made the request.
Yeah. We'll see if she comes back.
I'm still stuck on the lack of a crossing guard at Lincoln Street School. My son used to walk there too when he was in elementary school. And, when you get older and it's so cool to walk alone, I would have been terrified at that. Hopefully they fix that pretty soon.
Mr. Chairman, that is the resident who reached out to us with the request.
Okay.
We always email the residents back indicating, thank you for your questions. You'll be on we'll place you on the agenda. The meeting is such and such a date. Please keep your eyes open for the agenda being posted.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know it's a little bit extra work for you guys, but
She's back.
Okay, she's back.
Hi, can you hear me now?
I can.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, thank you so much for discussing. My name is Ash. I'm from Silas Drive. My husband and I moved about 3 months ago to the neighborhood, and lovely neighborhood. Thank you for everything that you guys are doing to keep it family friendly and healthy. I just wanted to throw out there an idea, and I don't know if this is possible. I have no traffic safety background by any means, so just wanted to see if this is an idea. If there were some kind of a light to say, like, or a sign to say, slow down, children, play here. I have a 3-year-old, I have dogs. My in-laws also live with me who are elderly. So just some kind of a sign, even to say, I understand that it'll be hard to maybe do a crosswalk there. But any other options that you guys might suggest that might work on this to cross to the other side?
Okay. Scott, do we have how many, is that an area that has a lot of signs to begin with? I know there's a lot of signs about the low clearance on the bridge.
Yeah, Brian, has there been is that a known speeding area? Do you know? I'm not sure.
I think everywhere in town is a known speeding area. Typically, most of the issues we deal with speeding is after the aqueduct, heading more towards 290, where they really kind of ramp it up. I'm not saying that they don't speed there. It's it's such a tight road in that spot. I think people tend to be a little more cautious because of that, and with the hill right there. Again, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's more after the aqueduct that we see more issues.
Well, there are no speed limit signs that I see on the approaches, which puts it at 35. So, I mean, I would be happy to install, the committee so chooses, to install some speed limit signs along this corridor.
Yeah, I think even a speed limit sign and even because that's right along the aqueduct, maybe something along the lines of, children playing or something along that line.
Okay.
I think
About like congested area.
Speed limit signs, I think would be great too.
Okay.
Yep. And it'll give the police chief somewhere to put up his little placards there that have the radar gun.
There we go.
Thank you. One quick suggestion. Hi, my name is Nitin Amash's husband. Hey, would it be possible then, if not a crosswalk or something, to add a sidewalk to the next crosswalk, essentially, so that we could have the elderly residents in Silas to be able to cross to go to downtown and whatnot? Because I think that's the biggest issue, is we can't get to the sidewalk, which is on the opposite side of the road. I know, like a few feet or like a couple of feet to the right towards downtown, there is a crosswalk that near that old office space. There's a parking lot and there's a crosswalk there. So if there's some sort of a mud or a stone walkway, that would be good enough to get to the crosswalk, and we'll just go on our way from there.
So I do know there was actually a presentation. So I'm also on the planning board, and there was actually a presentation by somebody who, the person who owns that building, that warehouse, as well as across the street, and they wanted to put up some housing down there. And one of the concerns he raised this concern as well, is he's had a couple employees actually be hit as they're walking across from that parking lot over to their building. And so he actually wanted to build parking as part of this next to that building, because I guess he owns a parcel of land there on the side with the building as well. But we can definitely, let's start with the street signs, or the speed limit signs. But we can definitely, Scott, maybe we keep this one on the agenda and go over it again in a couple months.
Okay, certainly.
I agree.
Thank you,
I
everyone.
appreciate
We really
your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate everything you guys are doing as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks. Where'd he go? Bill, the pedestrian accidents that you just talked about, when did those happen? Those weren't in the last year, correct?
No. He's been there for quite some time, and I think he was talking to us over time that had happened. But
okay, right.
Most of the accidents that occur where Bill's talking about happens just past that spot where that tree jets out into the middle of the roadway. I can think of numerous accidents that occur right there because of that large tree that just kind of still sticks out a little bit. But that's definitely a hot spot for accidents over there.
That American sycamore is certainly sturdy.
Oh, it sure is.
Just
about Hudson Street.
Just so the committee's aware, and the resident brought this up about an additional sidewalk, and we were talking about complete streets earlier. Installation of new sidewalks is incredibly challenging and costly. As soon as you put a sidewalk in, you have to have a vertical curb. When you have a vertical curb, you need closed drainage. In order to have closed drainage, you need to have a defined discharge. Typically, that discharge is going to require a drainage discharge easement. And nowadays, you need to have stormwater treatment before you implement a new discharge. Couple that with the fact that there's likely utility pole conflicts and adjacent properties. So if you live in a road where there's, quotation fingers, country drainage, and your front lawn just kind of drains off to the edge of the road and it kind of goes its way, all of a sudden I put a 6-inch curb and a sidewalk. I have a 6-inch wall that I built in front of your property for a nice big puddle.
Right.
It's a challenge from all directions to put in new sidewalks. So it's a wonderful idea to add them, but there's a lot of thought and time associated with it.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think, like I said, I think we keep this one on the agenda for now and just bring it back every couple months to see if there are any fresh ideas on it.
Will do.
Thank you. Okay, number 2E, no parking zone on Sturbrook Lane and Jenkins Drive. This was sort of a late add to our agenda. Being on the planning board, I saw some of what went on, Scott, but why don't, for everyone's knowledge, why don't you bring us up to speed on this one?
Oh, sure. I can give you the history if you have a few days.
A few days.
Ooh, it's rough.
As you know, the section of Bartlett Street abuts an industrial zone. That industrial zone has a lot of warehouses. Warehouses result in truck traffic. Trucks end up going all over the place at times and parking all over the place. A resident reached out to us with concern about trucks, tractors, no trailer, just the tractor, but still, it's a large vehicle parking on the side of the road in the Jenkins and Sturbrook neighborhood, and asked if we could implement a no parking zone. In order to get a no parking zone, the select board needs to approve it. The select board approved no parking on Bartlett Street from Route 20 to the town line. You can see the no parking signs we've installed along that corridor. They're very tall. They're very tall for a reason. Tractor trailer drivers are pretty high in the air. And they're still, correct if I'm wrong, Chief, they're still parking there. I don't know if they have their auto idlers on and they're shutting down every 5 minutes. But again, this resident requested no parking zone in their neighborhood. That could only be implemented by the select board, and things for this committee to consider before recommendation obviously would be impacts on others who use parking in front of their homes. My son's friends park in front of my house. When I have parties here, we have people park. My family parks out front. No parking for one is no parking for all, unless I'm wrong, Chief.
Didn't we have issues with high school students parking there back in the day?
That was on Hemlock when I think the school was being maybe redone. We had there's still a sign on Hemlock that says I believe some sort of no high school parking, or there's some sign at Hemlock that has that now still. That hasn't been an issue since.
So I see that there are a bunch of, this one's going to get a lot of conversation, I'm sure. I actually, when I ran on the planning board, this was one of the big things. So this is something that's been in town for many years. I do want to make one comment. I agree with Scott in that I think putting a no parking zone would hurt the residents. I mean, I understand why they want it. But what I would make a recommendation of instead is a truck exclusion on those streets. No truck has any business being on Sturbrook, on Jenkins. Those are dead-end streets, and they're using them as turnarounds. I would also include Laurel Ave and Blueberry as those, so that they can't just go up Hemlock and do a turnaround up there. Because that way you can do a truck exclusion, but people can still, if they have a party on the 4th of July or Memorial Day, they can still park in the street. So that being said, we're going to go through board members first, and then we'll open it up to the public. So Lisa, you have your hand up first.
Yeah, is there no other way, could you do resident only parking on there so that the residents and their guests would have availability? I don't know that they're having a party with a tractor trailer, somebody to come up. That might be one way to get around it. I don't know if your criteria, Scott would know this, if the criteria for HCVR would actually work on that for that reason, because you have to have so many trucks and that sort of thing. But perhaps figuring out a way of being creative, and maybe Brian can help us with that, that would help the residents to have the protection, but not hamstring them into a nobody
Right.
can park situation.
Right.
So maybe if, have you used for resident only before? I mean, we see that in Boston, obviously.
Yeah, the problem with resident only though is you have to be able to track it, right? How do you track if a car there is a resident or not?
Well, you're doing it more for trucks.
But if it's resident only, then it's resident only, which means Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to enforce it as resident only.
Yes, and yeah, how would we be able to tell that it wasn't Scott's friend's son coming to visit?
Right.
What about like no truck
I-
parking?
So yes, I agree with that, but I think the bigger issue here is they've always had trucks going up that road and turning around and coming back down, using it as a turnaround
Okay.
spot.
So it's
So
not just parking.
it's not this time it's parking. I think it's a bigger
Okay.
issue.
Okay.
But
I-
That's helpful to know.
go ahead.
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Rachel. No, go ahead.
So I live on Hemlock. We've had residents only parking for 20 years because it was being used as sort of in an adjunct parking lot when the high school was under construction. That was the impetus for that. We have never had an issue. I have 2 teenage daughters. We've never had an issue, when neighbors have had cars there. The only time that I've ever called is when I saw a student parking and clearly using it as a parking, a parking for the school. And that was the impetus for the sign. It's never been an issue. The other idea that had been discussed was potentially saying residential parking instead of residence, so that if someone's an invited guest, then they would be residential versus commercial. That might be broader. But we've had residents only on that sign for years. It's never been a problem. The other question I have is, has anyone talked to Amazon? I drive by that facility all the time. There's a warehouse across the street that I honestly thought had an arrangement with Amazon because the trucks were parking there so frequently. Then a very substantial sign was knocked down. A few weeks later, there was a gate up. So there clearly is no relationship. So I'm just wondering, has anyone reached out to Amazon? Truck drivers have to rest. We don't want them driving without their rest. I completely understand the safety requirements. They may get to, their loading dock early and they need a place to stay. So I'm just wondering what Amazon's response has been, if anyone's reached out, and what we can hold them responsible for. That it was something that in the peer survey, one of the communities had said that, they expect the warehouses to provide the parking for the trucks there. So I'm just wondering what those conversations have been, if any. I don't know if the chief knows, if the town administrator has reached out.
through the
Go ahead,
chair.
Chief. Yes, sir.
So, Rachel, yeah, it's interesting. I knew the sign. I know the signs were there, and I just couldn't remember what it said about the.
Yeah.
I actually remember when that was an issue, and I think that's goes back to Lisa's point, about the residents only. To see how we were able to enforce that back. Well, God, it was probably 15 years ago.
Long time. Yeah.
It's just not something that we typically do anymore, enforcing it. But if we did it then, we should be able to do it now. So let me look into that, because maybe that would be one way we could go about the Stirrup Brook and Jenkins area, if we could erect signs like they have on Hemlock. And if there's a way that we can enforce it through a no parking citation, I think it's worthy of looking into. I'm gonna look that back up. I don't remember off the top of my head that long ago, but it's definitely worth looking into. To answer your question regarding the communication that we've had with Amazon, I believe it's been very little since. It's been a while, and I think that's there's been some transition obviously at Town Hall over the last 6 months, and I think that's probably the major reason. But the town administrator and I, after receiving some of these emails, I suggested that we just take a little field trip so he could see the area for himself. So we went out on Friday, and I drove him around and showed him all the areas of concern. When I saw that picture of the tractor trailer truck parked on Stirrup Brook, that bothered me because that is a quality of life issue. I mean, there's some things we can do. There's if we can prevent that, we should be definitely looking into it. So we drove around. We looked at that new gate that they put up in front of, I think it's 301 Bartlett Street. So clearly they're fighting now with Amazon. Obviously we know there was some battles going on between FedEx and Amazon. So we know the issues. I brought the town administrator up to speed about it. And one of his questions to me is like, is there someone at Amazon that we're having conversation with? And again, it was before his time. It was kind of before my time, but I don't know. But I think we're going to rekindle those conversations.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, and Scott, that CMRPC meeting that happened several years ago, they actually showed up to. So I was very impressed because, there were some angry residents, me being one of them, and they did show. So I felt like at least at that point they were cooperating. So who knows what some communication
was at the meeting that was held at the high school where we did the walking tour.
Yeah, we did the walking tour.
Yeah, that was fun.
I was on that too.
Oh, were you? Okay. I didn't know you back then though, Bill. But yeah, I think that was a great thing to have. And we had the other companies up there too. Obviously they do Pile, FedEx. So, I think it's worth revisiting and hopefully rekindling the relationship that we did have.
So.
Yeah, that would be
great.
Go ahead.
Just to build on the chief's commentary, I was involved since day one with the Amazon discussions. We did have an active Amazon working group. There was a local representative who was in charge of the actual facilities. There was a community relations liaison, and then there was a regional director gentleman who was involved, and we were communicating with them. We had monthly meetings for a little while. That tapered off, and as the truck driving issues kind of tapered off, and we were re-engaging around the holidays, and when topics like this came up, we re-engaged. And Chief is absolutely correct with the transitions at the town administrator's office since John Cordero left. There's been a lot of change in the office, and the continuity has fallen to the wayside. So I'm happy to re-engage General O'Brien and the new town administrator and the Amazon representatives. Just so everyone here knows, I'm sure you do. Some people in the public may not. One of the anomalies with Amazon is they don't have drivers. They don't have tractors. They have trailers. They're blue. They got a big swoosh on them. But the tractors are all different. They're all independent drivers. Some of them are from larger reputable companies, and they tend to be very responsive to the requests of their clients. Others are just standoff drivers, their own tractors. They can be a little more challenging to manage. So, through the chief, we'll re-engage Amazon to see if we can right the ship.
Yeah, I will add one thing to the chief's comments as well. 301 Bartlett is actually approved as a new warehouse. So that fence is up for new construction. So they will be building over there, which I believe is why that fence is up. So, Brian, go ahead.
Thanks. Two things. Yeah, for sure. I think this is a great opportunity to rekindle that relationship because we have a new police chief and a new town administrator. Go over with a pie and introduce yourself and whatever. Right?
Totally.
To be honest, like in the last time I just moved here from Milford like a year and a half ago. Milford had 3 years of just constant headbutting with Amazon, and then when the select board changed over, basically, it became a priority to improve that relationship. And things improved and things got listened to and things changed. And I think that's going to be a more effective approach than trying to play whack-a-mole with a million signs. Not that we can't also put up a no trailer parking sign here and there. I did want to touch on the HCVE though. I mean, because we've talked the last couple of months about how expensive those are and how we only get a couple a year and how onerous the restrictions are. It feels like taking a sledgehammer to an ant. I don't think it's gonna work for us. So I would definitely.
The reason I bring it up is because number one, it's a dead end, so there should be no trucks. And I can show you videos and pictures that we've received at the planning board over the last 2 years of lots of trucks going up, turning around, and coming back down, using that as a turnaround spot.
Right.
So, you know, there shouldn't be any. So even if there's one, that's one too many to me.
Well, I understand, but but this is not the first heavy commercial vehicle exemption request that's come before this committee. And all of those times, the emphasis has been there is a process and there is a lot of steps and there are a lot of requirements, and it is not every street meets it. And it is an expensive process to go through. So if this is what if we really want to make if this is how we want to use that resource, then fine. But, you know, it's a resource.
There's probably other ways to go about getting rid of the trucks. Yeah.
Okay. Lisa.
I just wanted to ask a couple things. So if we put residential parking only, could you then put one of those little smaller signs that say trucks take notice? At least that would send a little bit more of a message. But who is it, Scott? Do you order the signs, or do you have to come to us, the board, and say we're asking to have some signage put up, and then do that?
We have operating budget for new signs and sign replacement. We're not going to put up any regulatory signs that are not enforceable by the police department. Some communities put signs up at free random, however they want, wherever they want. That's not Northborough, and that's not me. If Chief Griffin can't enforce it, there's no reason to have that sign there. It's only going to result in problems. So if there's a legal mechanism to say residential parking only, no truck parking, something to alleviate this obvious problem in a neighborhood that doesn't deserve this, I'm happy to accommodate. But if the chief can't enforce it, the signs aren't going to be there.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm going to have to just do a little research on a past history of the Hemlock situation and see how we were able to enforce that. Because if we put the signs up, there had to have been a way we enforced it.
Right.
Tow trucks.
I think, tow trucks is a good idea. I would think though that if you needed the vehicle to enforce it, then you have the legislation create that. So it wouldn't be a dead end. It would be something to look further into. Because I think we need to put fines. I mean, I want to see some fines out. I know up in New Hampshire, I see the HVAC. That's all right.
HCD.
You know what
Close.
you mean.
Around. And then New Hampshire, it's like $356 fine. It says right on the little sign, a fine. And I think that once you start seeing money, and it's not a big sign, but it gets your attention. Well, I'm going to get a fine for that kind of money. Am I going to take that, that big risk? So I think that's the next level on some of these, if they're not being, you wouldn't put it on the residential parking only sign, but you could put it on the street signs where there are heavy commercial vehicle.
Yes. Okay. Brian.
Oh, just so I know, Rachel, that the residential parking sign you're talking about, that's at Hemlock and Main Street, right? Over by the neighborhood tavern.
Yeah, well, yeah. So it's sort of a little bit in Hemlock. I don't think it's right on Main.
It's like just on the inside of the intersection. Yeah, no,
it's pretty.
I'm just trying to like scan Google Maps and see if I can figure out where it is.
Yeah, it's pretty subtle, and it's actually just limited to school hours. So weekends and outside of school, it's not relevant. And the way that they had enforced it was they would look at the license plate and see who it was registered to and whether it was registered to someone on the block. And again, that's only if someone called. So, I was the Karen who called when a student parked there, when I knew, and I had young kids and I didn't want them,
Yeah.
doing that. But yeah, we had cars lined up on both sides of the driveway, both sides of the street. And so we were very appreciative, and it was like almost overnight a difference.
Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other member comments? If not, I know that there are a few hands up in the audience.
Oh, good.
So Janine,
Hi, can you hear me?
yes, we can.
Awesome. Well, Bill, thank you very much for doing a great job of explaining the situation, because I know you've been part of it for years. But I have to say, you did take all of my talking points. So
Sorry.
that's all right. I live on Starrbrook. I am the one that probably wrote, well, I know I wrote one of the letters. I'm sure you got multiple letters about this one specific situation with the truck, and the trucker was actually there for 2 hours sleeping on our street. And at the time he was idling, so we were able to call the cops, and they came, and the only thing they could do was ask him to shut his engine off, because legally he's allowed to be there, which is a little creepy to have people sleeping on your street in an 18-wheeler. So I think what the residents are looking for, honestly, is I love the residential parking only sign. It kind of gives the residents a leg up to actually get those truckers chased if they're not supposed to be parked there, because they need to follow what the signs are saying. The truck exclusion sign, I'm going to be honest, kind of I would love a truck exclusion sign, 100%. I don't want trucks on our street anymore. I have taken at least 50 videos of trucks that I could catch coming down our street and using it as a U-turn or just sitting there waiting. But, we do live next to the industrial area. We don't live in the industrial area. It kind of sheds a little bit of a bad light on our street, kind of like a beacon, like, oh, we don't want to live here because there's 18-wheelers that come down this street, and there are people that are trying to sell. And I think it's going to, cause an issue down the road. I think baby steps would be helpful. Residential parking only would be fantastic. Growing up, I lived on a street that had, residential parking or no parking. And all we had to do is, if we were having a party or somebody was having a block party or somebody was having a couple friends sleep over, you just called the police department and you said, hey, these cars are going to be on the street overnight. And they would be like, okay, no problem. So I don't know, Chief, you would be able to tell me if that's possible. I don't know. But again, fighting with Amazon is virtually impossible. And I would appreciate, yes, if the conversations could start up again, maybe it would be a little bit helpful. And I'm not saying the situation has not gotten better. I think truck drivers talk to each other, and that was our fear. It's like, okay, one truck is now sleeping here. They talk to each other and they'll be like, okay, here's a great spot. It's quiet. You're right down the street from where you have to be in 2 hours, 3 hours. You can just park here. So again, I'm open to, anything that you guys are able to help us out with, but that's just my fear. And I hope you guys understand. And if you have any questions, as a resident who's been doing this for almost 3 years now, fighting with Amazon and FedEx and ADUI pile, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have, not living here and not fully understanding maybe the situation.
Thanks, Janine. Chief.
Yeah, Janine, thanks for that. And I'm thinking about it a little bit more, and I think if we put the residents only parking signs up there, I can tell you my officers are not going to be looking for your guests and your friends who are parked outside your house. I think the point is it gives us a little teeth for our officers to enforce something when that truck driver is there. So in the case that happened a few weeks ago, yes, the officer was correct. He really didn't have any legal authority to move him along. Now this would give him a little teeth where he said, hey, you're not a resident, take a hike. I can tell you right now that our officers would not be enforcing that for residential vehicles. And if they do, give me a call. But that's really the putting the signs up basically is for tractor trailers. Without specifically saying tractor trailers, that's what we're doing it for, I think, if we were to do that.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Janine.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comment?
I just
Okay.
think that this specific situation is one of the reasons why it's so important to have this committee, because things like that should not be happening.
Right.
And Janine said it perfectly when she said it's creepy. Whether it's a tractor trailer or not, if somebody who doesn't belong there is sleeping in their car outside of your house, that's uncomfortable. And if these trucks are getting to the place where they need to pick things up 2 or 3 hours early, why aren't they allowed to park somewhere on Amazon's property or FedEx's property?
A great
That's what
question.
should be happening.
It's a great question, Kate. And the town administrator and I talked about that on Friday because there is plenty of room behind their facility that's not being used during the day. It's all gated off right now. Trucks come in and they get their load and they leave. But it seems to me there should be space up there where they could park and idle in their own lot. And that's something I guess maybe they could answer for us. I don't understand their operations, but they have the space, in my opinion.
Well, thank you guys for opening up those discussions again, because I think that's really gonna make a difference.
Go ahead, Rachel.
I'm sorry, I could talk for hours on this. I am shocked that they have space in their parking lot. I truly am. I have seen those tractor trailers lined up on the side of Bartlett Street. I'm just shocked. Anyway, I as someone who drives by there all the time, so there's no excuse for that. Anyway, the onus certainly shouldn't be on residents in the town of Northborough. And I understand these are freelance truck drivers, but Amazon needs to take some responsibility. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Okay. Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, quickly, I totally agree, and thank you for bringing that up, Ryan, and with Tim, because I always felt that way too. I have actually driven up there to see the back parking lot, and I can't imagine that they haven't got room for 2 or 3 tractor trailers or the cabs to spend some time up there. Is there any way that we can? Did you and Tim talk about making a request to them, or how do we get some play on that?
Yeah, I think maybe Brian's suggestion, bringing a pie up there later this week and introducing ourselves. But I think that's on the town administrator and I on our agenda a little bit, is to make that introduction with both of us being new to town. Just to understand their operations, right? Even the employee parking, I mean, it seems to me there's not a lot of employees that work out of there, believe it or not. And, maybe during the overnight hours are busier, but it just seems that we could get a few tractors being able to park there. And why can't they? I don't have that answer. I would like to hear it from them. I don't know.
Yeah, great. I was thinking the same thing quite a little while ago, because it just didn't make sense not to have space.
Yeah, And I'll say from the planning board, one of the things that did come across one of our meetings about a year ago was FedEx was actually going to convert one of the buildings, one of the sub buildings up there, um, to, I forget what it was, if it was some type of like washing facility or I don't think it was a mechanic, like they were going to work on their trucks. But one of the things that came up was that FedEx and Amazon don't own that property. They lease the property, right? So they don't have, I don't think they have the right to be able to say our drivers can park here because they don't own the lot itself. It's owned by the building owner, who leases the space out to Amazon and FedEx. I believe, if I remember correctly, that was our conversations on the planning board, because we had asked about the driveway, about the shared driveway, and both Amazon and FedEx came back and told us there's nothing we can do about the driveway because we don't own it.
So to
Go ahead, Scott.
expand on that a little bit, Mr. Chairman, you're correct. Amazon does not own that property; they lease it. One of the challenges we had in our earlier discussions with Amazon under the prior full-time town administrator was the conditions imposed by the special permit approval, which indicated tractor trailers have to take a right when they get out of there, and they have to come from Cedar Hill side when they enter. That condition is on the property, and that condition is borne by the property owner. Where Amazon is a tenant, it doesn't fully lie on them. And then where all the drivers are independent drivers, it doesn't lie on them either. But Amazon was committed previously to engage their drivers, to have flaggers, to do analytics with the GPS devices in their trailers. So, it was not an adversarial relationship we had with Amazon previously. We were actively working together to try to address the needs. It just stopped communicating because there was a vacancy in the office, and it's absolutely time to re-engage that.
Yep, I agree. So Chief, when you and the town administrator have those conversations, you may want to add the building owner into those conversations.
Sounds good.
Okay, if there's no more comment on that one, I think that one we'll bring that up at the end here and see what we want to vote on. Scott, if you want to move on here, we'll move on to number 3, to the peer community survey.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So we sent out the peer community survey questions. Thank you to everyone for bringing up the various questions. I think it's a great group of inquiries we had with other communities. Everybody got their assignments, went off to do their reach out, and we got back 14 responses, some varying a wide variety of detail and responses. One community just said no. 7 questions, no. That was it. Others had like bulleted dialogues about everything they've done and 5 or 6 different attachments. Kate, thank you.
That was made up for the other one.
That was an impressive read in a snowstorm. I appreciate that. But I summarized the results in an email to the committee. I was surprised by the stop signs. So there was 3 questions that were posed with a variety of sub questions. One was, do you use speed humps or bumps? The second one was, when you install stop signs, do you follow the regulations, MUTCD, the standards? And then the third one was, are you being impacted by trucks? I'm paraphrasing. The speed humps, there were 14 communities that responded. 4 of them are using speed humps. One of them is a trial basis. They only have 1 installed now. 1 community is planning on trying one next year. And then 9 of them just flatly said, no, we don't use them. So of the 14, 3 are actively using them, 2 are trying, and 9 said, no, we don't use them. Stop signs, I was shocked that half follow the MUTCD require warrants for stop signs. The other half don't. They just put them up, I guess. I was a bit shocked by that. And then regarding the truck traffic, there was one community that is doesn't house warehouses, but it is a cut through, and they've seen substantial tractor trailer traffic increases because they are a cut through between interstate highways. So those are the results thus far. I'm surprised at the stop sign one, but the speed humps doesn't surprise me. Great.
Thank you, everyone who reached out to individual towns. I know a lot of them just, didn't respond. I think I was the one who got the no, and I sort of joked about it. Very talkative person, but yeah, no, that's good. That's we'll keep that in our back pocket, and maybe in a year we send out the same questions again, and just see if there's any difference.
Yeah, certainly to see how the two test ones did. See how those communities, the results came out. Yeah, I'd be interested to see that.
Yep. Any other comments from any other members? Oh, Rachel, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my personal peeve with the stop sign is the four-way intersections with no stop sign. And I completely understand if it ain't broke, we haven't seen accidents, the sight line issues. But anyway, I just want to put that out there. That will always be a concern of mine. So I don't know that they'll meet MUTCD standards, but it's something I'll probably continue to bring up. That's it.
Okay. Brian.
Yeah, the one for me on the, I guess it was also a stop sign thing, was I can't remember which dead poets' names are on the streets. There's that three-way intersection with Longfellow, maybe, and Emerson.
Longfellow and Emerson, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Emerson, Lake, and Palmer down there.
Yeah.
And just because it's such a weird intersection, like to me, that's one where maybe some judgment on the ground is warranted above and beyond
or maybe somebody needs to put a flower pot in the middle of that intersection so it becomes a rotary.
That sort of guerrilla urban planning is definitely a thing. Yeah, for
Or
sure.
just bring your kids through there when you're teaching them how to drive so they can understand that sometimes there is no direction and you just have to use common sense.
Yeah.
That's everywhere, man. I don't think you have to bring them to specific intersections for that.
Okay. So that's that. Thank you, Scott, for putting that all together. Tell Megan we said thank you. I know she's not on the call.
Yes.
So for the ongoing items, is there anything, Scott, that you think we need to bring up? I know we've got the memo. Chief, I don't know if you've written that memo yet or sent that about the additional officers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually in the process of that, and the town administrator is aware of it. I've had some more thoughts on it a little bit, and I discussed it with the town administrator. So we're going to ask for more officers, law enforcement officers. I'm a little hesitant on putting the term traffic division if we were to get it approved. I'm just a little concerned about putting that label on them. We need more officers to help enhance the traffic enforcement capabilities. Our numbers right now at the department are not where they should be as far as actual police officers. We have minimums that we must meet to fill our shifts, and they're not very high. And for instance, our minimums on our day shift and on our midnight shift are 2 officers. That means there could be 2 officers working tonight at midnight that have the whole entire town of Northborough under their watch. That's not good. That's not ideal. I'm not saying that happens all the time. In typical shift, our midnight shift operates with a sergeant and 2 officers. Our day shift typically runs with a sergeant and 2 or 3 officers. And our evening shift, which is 4 to midnight, operates typically with a sergeant and 3 officers. You take one officer who's entitled to days off, vacation, comp time, personal time, or sick time, and now we're running on minimums. So I've had that conversation. If we were to get a couple of more officers, we clearly will have what I feel will be an adequate number where we're going to be able to efficiently manage traffic and traffic enforcement to where I think it should be at. But to put an actual quote unquote division together, a traffic division, I don't know if it's realistic, but I can tell you that having more bodies will certainly help. And we will, the goal would be what our shifts are right now, for instance, what's it, 8 p.m.? Currently tonight, we have a sergeant and 3 officers, I believe, working tonight. We divide the town into sectors. We have a north sector and a south sector. The north sector operates north of Route 20. The south sector operates south of Route 20. And then there's the rover car. The rover can go basically wherever he or she wants to go. Primarily, they're the backup officer to the south car and the north car. We don't always have that rover car available because of our staffing right now. My goal would be if we were to get our minimum numbers up a little bit, that rover car would primarily be a traffic enforcement officer during that shift. But it wouldn't, he or she wouldn't be assigned to the actual division. I do have a sergeant, and I think I told you this last time that my first couple of weeks in, I appointed him as our traffic, as our sergeant in charge of traffic division, our supervisor in charge of traffic. And he has done a great job so far in the month that he's taken on that role to develop some new plans for us and how we can better address some of these issues that we talk about here. So again, increasing our staffing levels overall, hiring a couple of more law enforcement officers to better staff us. That's going to help us out a lot when it comes to traffic. So that's my basically my memo is some of what I just relayed. And I hope I still have all of your support. Again, my absolutely want to contribute more to traffic, to motor vehicle enforcement, to all of these issues. And I do certainly would welcome 2 more additional officers.
So I know we took a vote on this in our very first meeting. This was actually our first vote. So to put this memo together. So let me put this to the committee. Would we be okay with adjusting our vote to using traffic safety as a justification for new officers rather than dedicated to traffic enforcement?
Yes.
Chris, you got your hand up.
Yeah, 100%. I would support that. I think it becomes a domino effect when you take away those officers and you add them. I think Chief, you nailed it on the head there. So I'm fully in support of that.
Yeah, Rachel.
I completely agree. I mean, we're residents first, and the safety of the town will always be the priority. So yes, I'm in complete agreement with everything Chief said.
Okay. Kate, I know you had said something. Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, whatever we can do to support the police department, we know that having extra officers is nothing but beneficial for the whole town. So absolutely.
So Brian, you're the only one who I haven't gone to. Brian, are you okay with making that adjustment?
I was under the impression that that's what it was from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it essentially, it essentially is, right? I mean, if you know, if we were to get 2 new officers, you know, and we do our hiring process, we don't advertise it as, you know, traffic division officers, right? They are law enforcement officers. They go through the police academy like any one of our officers do. Once when we get them on staff, I think the previous chief, you know, had this envision of creating a unit, a specific unit where that's kind of all they do. There's some danger in that a little bit. First of all, I can't 100% guarantee that somebody would actually put in for that, or would want to just do that. You see it a lot, and I have done some research on it. You do see it more in larger cities, where they have, obviously a lot more roadway. It's a designated unit with, motorcycle officers and things like that. Some of the towns around us used to have an actual division. Westboro did. They do not anymore. There was a town about our size, similar. It didn't really develop. Our number one, again, I'll say it to all my officers all the time. Our number one complaint in town is traffic and speeding. And that's, it's a quality of life issue. And that's what we're out there doing. When we're not responding to calls, we're proactive, and our numbers certainly show that. We're out there doing work. We get paid for 8 hours. We're out there doing work, and a lot of times that is motor vehicle enforcement. So thank you for all of you for your support in this, and I will have that memo done by the next meeting.
Good. Scott, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just pulled the old minutes, and the motion was made to approve the motion was made in support of hiring 2 additional officers, period. There was,
okay.
I mean, the discussion was about traffic enforcement, but the actual motion was the hiring of 2 officers. So what the chief is describing is what this committee voted to support.
Right, and I was just a little like in the agenda here. I was a little concerned about the language in the agenda item where it's a dedicated to traffic enforcement. Clearly that's gonna, all of our officers are dedicated to traffic enforcement. But I was just a little worried about that. That's all. But thank you for everyone's support.
Okay. Scott, are there any other items on the ongoing items? No?
Nope. Everything else is set. We're all waiting for spring.
Finally get rid of the weather. According to Puxatawny Phil, it's going to come early, right?
Excellent.
Right at this moment, I'll open it up for a public comment. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to make comments to this committee? I don't see any hands going up. Okay. Before we get to the approval of the minutes, so Scott, is there any of the items that we discussed that you need us to vote on?
No, the speed limit sign installation is just standard practice. There's no amendments to any traffic regulations or circulations. I'm going to send the email out to the schools and copy the chair on it, and then I'll push some things from new items down to ongoing, and chief and town administrator are going to re-engage Amazon. So no, we have no need for action this evening.
What about the crosswalk alert systems? You said we had one of those in the budget. Do you need any input from us on which one?
You can think about it over the next month or so, and at the next meeting, like I said earlier, we're not going to install it for a while. Probably till April or May. And if it's in one of the school areas, we're not doing it until July, because I'm not going to dig up a giant hole where kids are crossing and putting concrete work out there. I'd be better off waiting. So there's no need for immediate action. We can deliberate which location is appropriate at another meeting if you like.
And what about a recommendation for additional for the next fiscal year?
That would be fantastic. If you'd like to support that, I'd be happy to convey that over to the town administrator through an actual vote.
Okay. Rachel, I know you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just didn't know if we needed to vote on a sign for Stirrup Brook.
The parking signs?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we probably need to vote on recommending that to the Board of Selectmen, but my guess, Scott, is that, that would be on the Board of Selectmen to come up with that, whatever the regulation is for that, correct?
So at the next meeting, hopefully by then, the chief could have determination on if it's a legally enforceable component, having a resident only and no truck parking or something to that effect. So the next meeting, if we have that information, you can take action for recommendation to the select board, and the select board can consider it.
Okay, so we'll
great.
move that to the next meeting and then do a vote on that then.
Mhm.
Does that work,
Okay.
Rachel?
That works for me. Thank you.
Okay. Lisa?
Are you going to make a request for some ARPA funds for those lights?
So I think we can leave that up to the select board on how they want to pay for those lights, but I think making a recommendation for, Scott, you were saying 5 in total, correct?
Yeah, we have 3 on Lincoln Street, 1 on Church, Center Drive, and Pleasant, Pleasant and Melican. Yeah, so there was 5 all in all.
So we have Scott has budget for 1, so if we make a recommendation for 4 additional for those other locations, and then that would be up to the select board on how they would want to appropriate funds for that, whether it's ARPA, whether it's, put it in the budget for next year or whatever, bring it to town meeting.
And if they, if it's brought to the board and the board says yes, is this something, even though you're not going to install them until April or May, ordering them would take some time, wouldn't it? I don't think they're in stock. I don't know if they're in stock, but this is February, so you're looking for 2 months. Would you not ask to have it ordered for this year's installation in the spring?
If the board is interested in supporting that through ARPA funds, I would solicit prices in advance, so the board has a number to go with. I'm pulling numbers just based on theory, and I would need to evaluate each location. Wheelchair ramps can vary in price drastically depending on slopes and adjacent grade conditions. So if this committee wants us to pursue that, then a vote would be helpful, and I can go down that avenue and get some prices, so that at the next meeting you can consider whether it's something you want to recommend to the select board, and then the select board can act.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Okay. So Scott, you'll get some prices for those 5, and then we'll go over that in the next meeting and potentially make a recommendation to the select board.
Yes. Yep. That sounds good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yep. So I guess there's no votes for today. There is one. Approval of the January 9th minutes. Did everyone have a chance to look those minutes over? Any changes or amendments? Do I have a motion to approve the January 9th, 2024 minutes?
Motion to approve the January 9th, 2024 minutes.
Okay, second.
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion made by Rachel, seconded by Chris. Roll call vote. Rachel?
Aye.
Brian?
Sorry, I have to abstain anyways.
Okay. Kate?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's 4 yes and 1 abstain. Our next meeting is, I keep using the computer that doesn't have a calendar on it.
Looks like March 12th.
It'll be the
March
12th.
12th. Okay. So next meeting will be March 12th. Scott will have all that information, and we'll have a lot to go through.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I second.
Motion made by Brian, seconded by Kate. Roll call vote. Rachel?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
You
Thank
too.
you.